Yeah, I would love to know if people can hear us.
We've seen the intro. Okay. Huh, that's interesting.
So let
Hmm.
me put that to USB, and that should be working. All right, it's now showing in OBS that the sound's good. I am in a new setup. I am at my dad's place while we're in the stay-at-home measures to help take care of things here and get some quality time with my dad. So
Hmm.
that's why we had some technical issues. Okay, Alex is saying he can hear us, so that's awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you Lionel for joining me today. How are you doing, Lionel?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You have the craziest frizzy hair ever.
Oh, I was trying to
I
hide it. It wasn't successful. But no,
mean,
I swear it is kind of neat. It's just the puff is like going crazy right now.
I mean, I can't really complain too much. I don't have any hair, and but
I'm overcompensating.
yeah, I know. It's like you have both, like all the hair that I should have. It's on your head now, so you have the hair for the both of us, right?
Yeah, for sure. But
All right. Yeah, so I'm excited about talking to this one about this topic. This topic's gonna be a little bit of a personal
mhm,
one. We're talking about inclusion in gaming, bringing in multiple ethnicities, bringing in genders, gender types, and identifications there. What does it mean to the challenges and the hurdles of trying to do that, but the benefits
mhm,
of trying to do it too. So I want to, we're going to start off by talking about some personal stuff, our experiences growing up and playing video games or watching TV shows, and how did that impact us, and then
mhm,
why did we bring this perspective into Genesis? Um,
mhm.
so I'm really excited about that. I hope Lionel, you're going to be comfortable
Yeah,
talking about some of this stuff.
it's gonna
Um,
be a great topic for
yeah,
sure.
so before we jump into that, I just want to bring up the Patreon stuff. So huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, Andrew, Gunther, Hill, Steven, Stevo, and Will. Thank you so much for being our top tier supporters. Patreon has helped us out so much this past year in 2020. And I
Yeah.
know that things are tough. So if you are a Patreon supporter and you end up closing your subscription for one reason or another, know that we take no offense to that. We completely understand, and we appreciate so much the support you've given us to this point. And if you're not a Patreon
Lot.
supporter and you join us, just know that we are so grateful for it. Um, the Patreon information up there. If you join before the end of the month, then in February you're gonna be getting the package with those foil cons. The foil Philip Kun artwork is probably one of my favorites. Like hand down, it looks so pretty.
Yeah. He did an amazing job with them.
Yeah, he really did. And
Hmm.
then you're also getting that full art in still figure without the border, which looks super cool. So, and if you are a Patreon member, even if you're not a Patreon member, I'd love to hear your opinions of things you would want to see as future Patreon promos. I'd love
Hmm.
to put that together. And then the other thing I want to do is talk about Future League a little bit. So, for the Future Leaguers, thank you so much for all your continued support to make sure that the future of the game looks very promising. Um, we will be doing our Future League testing tonight at 7 p.m. Lionel, will you be joining me?
Yes, I will be there tonight.
Nice. So we'll at least have me and Lionel, and we'll be streaming that. So we will be talking about a couple of the cards. And I think what I would like to do is whoever joins, probably near to the end, we'll play a few games and then we'll end the conversation with talking about some of the cards. Also, there's the tournament on the 23rd, the Future League tournament. Um, I'm really excited about that one. It's gonna be cool to see how Future League cards look in a competitive space.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting for me. It's our first time doing something like that, so that's gonna be fun.
Hmm.
Uh, so, like I said, Interesting, interesting. Um, and the yeah, so Future League happening, Future League event, and then if you are participating in Future League this month, then you'll end up getting that reverse art malfeasance, which we've been talking quite a bit about. It's a fun
Hmm.
card. So, all
Yeah,
right.
and reverse arts are awesome.
Yes,
Period.
yes. Okay, so let's bring our lovely faces back onto the screen so you can enjoy Lionel's wonderful, wonderful hair there. I'll be putting in the link for Discord in the chat here. So if you want to join
Mm.
our Discord, do that. And then I have two last announcements. One of them is the town hall happening on February 1st, where if you want more one on one conversations or group conversations about the Future League stuff, that's a great place to do it. And then starting in February, we are actually looking at moving the live stream event to a later time. We're thinking 8:30 p.m. on Fridays. If that works for you, let me know. Leave a comment and let me know if that time works for you. Because we know that this time right here is a little bit more challenging for most people. So
Mm.
um, we would like to find a time that works best for everyone. All right, let's jump into this topic. Are you ready, Lionel?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's first talk about what does inclusion mean to you? When you think about inclusion in gaming, what does that mean to you?
To me, it means bringing people in and making them feel like they're involved,
Okay.
or they're representative. So,
Yeah.
represented, sorry. So just feeling like there's a way for them to be a part of the culture and environment,
Yeah.
I guess.
And I
So,
think that's a big part of it, being represented. Like when I think about
mhm,
um, the gaming space, it's you have so many people, like people around the world are gaming now. It's not like when we were little and we didn't have access to the internet to know who was gaming. Now we see it all
mhm,
the time. We see live streams, we see events on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. We're seeing all players from all ethnicities, all
mhm,
basic everyone. Everyone's represented when it comes to the
mhm,
players. Um, but when it comes to the design space, that's where I feel like things are kind of lacking. So,
mhm.
from your perspective, your personal perspective as a gamer, because I know you are you are much more of a hardcore gamer than I am. Um,
I definitely spend more time with that.
so, from your perspective as a gamer, why do you think inclusion is important to you?
Why it would be important to me,
Yeah.
it's just it's important that every like for me that I feel represented and a part of the community. Um, I play a lot of high fantasy games and competitive games like Brawlhalla and Rocket League. Rocket League specifically, I mean, they're cars, so it isn't as
Mhm.
much of an involvement there when it comes to race specifically. But it's important for me because like to feel a part of the community, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I'm rambling on, sorry.
Yeah. Um, but not just part of the community. How do you relate when you like? I know together we've played games like Smash Brothers, and we play a game like Smash Brothers. On one end, you connect and you love some of these characters. Like who doesn't love Mario or um, who
Hmm.
did you play with in Smash Brothers? Who's your character?
Luigi was my character.
Luigi. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was all about Marth. Like I gotta
nice.
love the sword. Marth and Roy and anyone who has a sword. Um, but how did you feel like the fact that um, there was no one who kind of represented your ethnicity in the game? How does that matter to you?
Um, in for specifically when it came to Smash Brothers, I actually didn't spend a whole lot of time in that game, if I'm being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stayed away from that one, mainly because I didn't have the console. But if I were to think about why it mattered to me, it's just it's a very heavily dominated market one for one specific side, for the Caucasian side.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to kind of talk about this and put it into words because I've been fortunate not to have to worry about that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this
Sorry.
is a whole entire perspective that's like even just being male and playing games, you
Maybe
don't
that,
have to worry about it too much because um, you're on some level always represented. Um,
maybe that's the reason why I'm having a
yeah,
bit of trouble with this.
like if you think of all the games like we grew up with, so when we were young, you got Zelda, you have Mario, you like the Super Mario, you have what other were big games over Super Nintendo, Final Fantasies, Secret of Mana.
Hmm.
You always had a male lead in it. But I
Hmm.
remember being a kid and hanging around with my cousins, and all the girl cousins would be like, "How come there's no girl in this game?" Or like
Hmm.
they're playing Mario, and it's like you play as Mario or Luigi, and the princess is kidnapped, or you're
Hmm.
playing Zelda and you're playing as
Yeah.
Link, who's not even the title character to the game,
Yeah, that's
and the
true.
princess is kidnapped. The industry was always comfortable with this idea of
Hmm.
boys play the games, and
Hmm.
girls are the ones who need to be saved in a lot of these spaces. I can't
Yeah.
think of, except for actually, I remember it being such a big deal when people found out that in Metro, Samus was
Oh,
actually a
right.
girl.
Yeah.
Like that reveal at the end of the game was just such a big deal, and
Uh-huh.
it almost makes you want to look back at it and being like, it's a bigger deal that it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's so
Yeah, that's a
problematic
very good point.
that something like that actually occurred. Um,
Hmm.
but how about in other medium, like not just
Yeah.
video games, but like let's talk about TV
'Cause-
shows and movies. Like,
yeah.
um, did you feel represented? Did you have a role
Hmm.
model or character that you really liked that was your own ethnicity?
Um, so my biggest example I can think of, and I'm glad you brought this up because I didn't have specific examples when it comes to video games itself,
Mm-hmm.
but I watch a lot of animes, and back like Dragon Ball Z, I'm sure a lot of people it represented a big part of their childhood. It's like it was a very
Mm,
big part of my shows that I watched when I was younger,
yeah,
and I understand it is a Japanese anime, but most of the characters were represented as Caucasian, and there were a very select amount of black characters,
yeah,
which is great because they were represented. But the problem was is when they're represented is they're very stereotypical.
yes,
I can't remember the name of the character that I'm thinking of, but he was represented with like really large lips, very body, tall, just the more normal tropes that you see. And then you start to think that there is only one view of how Black people are represented in general, and that's wrong, and it definitely doesn't have a level of inclusion that should have been
yeah,
a part of the show. It kind of felt haphazard that they just threw it in to me. And of
yeah,
course, I can only speak from my experiences. This may not be what they're intended, but that's the way it came off across to me.
yeah.
Um, so, yeah.
No, that's so true. And I don't know if you spend time doing this, but like I remember being little and thinking, there was no brown character in any show that I can recall
Mm.
that had a really really cool brown character. At least when it came to like African Americans, we still had Will Smith, like Fresh Prince of Bel Air, still
Hmm.
had a thing. You still had Shaft, right? Like there were still some
Hmm.
really really badass African Americans, but I
Yeah,
don't
that's true.
remember any really awesome brown character that I could base myself off of. The only brown character that I can remember from any medium growing up was Apu from Simpsons. And
And you're gonna
like,
say Apu.
like
Yeah.
that was what I used to think was like how the world saw brown people, and it wasn't until
Hmm.
more recently, like now you're seeing a lot of CEOs, brown CEOs, especially like
Hmm.
oh, big giant companies. You have a lot of brown CEOs now, and
Hmm.
it does have a different portrayal, and media is starting to portray things very differently too. Um,
Hmm.
and so things have definitely changed a lot from when I was a kid. But I remember being little, and my favorite, well, like one of my all-time favorite characters is Sephiroth. And I
Of
remember
course.
being in high school thinking, oh, was it high school or late elementary school? I can't even remember now. And being
Mm.
like, I wish I had hair like Sephiroth. But every time I grew out my hair, well, it looked more like yours. So
Yeah.
I didn't really get that opportunity to have someone who I'm like, I want to look like that person. I remember for
Yeah.
Halloween wanting to dress up as Robin and being like,
Hmm.
this looks weird, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a brown Robin. Like, that's not a thing. And
And
I'm sorry, you're going to say?
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to say that like it really shows you how important those figures in media
Yeah.
are. Like because you idolize them, and that's what you want it to
Yeah.
be. Well, not want it to be, but like you aspire to it at some
Yeah.
level. So,
Like when you're young, you got Halloween, and that's when you want to dress up
hmm
as your favorite characters. And then when you get older, going to like Anime North, I went to Anime North. I think it was my second time at Anime North as a whole. Was back in 2019, just before the year before COVID, and we were vending there. And I remember people being like, "Oh, are you going to cosplay? Are you going to do something?" And I'm like, I don't have any character that I want to dress up as. Like it's
yeah,
there's no character from any medium that I'm like, yeah, that's a really awesome brown
yeah,
character. And if they did, and like there are some characters from like Daisy movies that I really like, and if I were to dress up as them, I'm basically just wearing what I wore to my wedding. Like that's not me
yeah,
dressing up. That's just me wearing putting on formal clothing. So
yeah. That's
like you
hilarious.
don't have that. And when I
No,
remember one year for Halloween, I was a Ninja Turtle, and like that felt comfortable because I wore a mask, so I wasn't brown anymore. And like that's
yeah,
another thing about just being in the fantasy gaming space. We talked about World of Warcraft, or you talked about even so World of Warcraft or not Final Fantasy. I'm trying to think of other games, but in World of Warcraft, because you have these other races. Um, like you have the dark elves, you have the
yeah.
orcs, you have the undead, um eh,
Trolls. Yeah.
yeah, all these other races that come in on fantasy. When you go to cosplay as them, ethnicity is kind of taken out of the question,
Hmm.
because those characters are they're their own disguise. Like if you're gonna dress up as an orc, it doesn't matter really your ethnicity. So again, you're not seeing a great role model for yourself in a lot of these spaces.
I think there's a lot of pull when it comes to cosplaying with those characters because,
Yeah,
like, even though their costumes are so elaborate,
yeah,
and I've experienced the same thing with trying wanting to cosplay characters like from some of the animes I loved, but there's never felt something
yeah,
that would go towards me, and I would like to expand on it too because there is a lot of stigma behind a person of color cosplaying somebody. A Caucasian person, a person
hmm
that isn't of the same ethnicity. Um, yeah, so that was a big part of it too, I think.
yeah. And I think it hurts for um, it definitely hurts for us like who want to
Hmm.
participate in these communities and do really cool things. It's we can't cosplay as our favorite characters in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Now, things are changing. We've mentioned this. Things are changing a lot
yeah,
in the mediums. I know, like if you look at Comics, when they did the reboot, the New 52, they brought some of the characters in as different ethnicities, different genders, or even different sexual orientations, and
hmm
that was nice. But now we come into some of the challenges. So let's talk a little bit about
hmm
Genesis. When you look at Genesis, I know we've from the very beginning we've thought a decent amount about inclusion and
hmm
how do we portray ethnicities. And it was interesting because the original team was you, me, and Arthur, and none of us are Caucasian. Um, and so we had Malik, who was coming in with original Malik. Let's talk about original Fable slash Malik was supposed to be for African descent. He was supposed to have dark skin.
hmm
Um, Idris, Nubia, Raha are supposed to have more of the olive
yeah,
skin. So if you look
hmm
at Arthur's artwork for those champions, they are darker skin than Demian and Phillips. And then when you look at um, same with Kendra. Kendra was supposed to be that same. Fong and Long are supposed to have more of that Oriental skin type. And
Hmm.
I think that still came through with Damyan's rendition of those champions.
Hmm.
And so, um, I know we're not perfect at it, and
No.
the thing is, it's not something you are going to be perfect at or always optimize on. But
Yeah.
the important part is that we're having these conversations and
Yeah.
we're trying our best to be better,
For
right?
sure. The topic of inclusion is very personal to a lot of
Yeah,
people. So I don't know if there is a scenario where you can be truly inclusive, but
yeah,
you bring like for sure it's a conversation that has to continue to
yeah.
happen. We have been having.
And so I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to being inclusive is it's hard to represent something that you yourself are not part of.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I feel like I can represent the Muslim slash Indian Pakistani culture a lot more in
Mm.
gaming, but I still don't feel 100% comfortable representing even Hindu mythology in the games, or we take other parts that are brown, like other countries that have primarily brown people there, like Afghanistan or these type of spaces, and I still don't feel like I can fully represent that, even though I do identify as being brown because I am,
Yeah.
and I love being Daisy. I love who I am, but I I cannot be the sole person who represents that, and
Mhm.
like from your side, I'm sure you feel the same in a lot of ways when it
Yeah,
comes to that.
I definitely do. And as I was trying to touch on before, I've been very fortunate in my life to not have to um, be a large target of racism specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't speak for somebody who has a higher amount of segregation, I guess I'll
Yeah.
say. Um, so, but in the same time, at the same time, I am a part of the visible minority.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a part of my life.
Yeah.
But uh, and it's definitely something that I continue to talk about, and I have friends that have had issues with it.
Yeah.
So, being uh, inclusive when it comes to involving races and peoples and uh, people that identify as whoever they feel like they need to identify is definitely something that I'm happy that we are including in the game,
Yeah.
and we are going to continue to strive to be better at it.
Yeah.
So.
So, from your perspective, what is one thing we do well when it comes to this sense of inclusion? Just like, what is the one
Mhm.
thing you think we do well?
Personally, I really like the fact that you represented women specifically
Mm-hmm.
in Genesis. The majority of our characters are female. I feel like the art's been depicted in a tactful way. There hasn't been over sexualization at any level.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate that. And there is a story that um, there was a gentleman, I don't remember his name, if you can remember his name, who we had a conversation. We met up specifically, and he had a conversation, and it sparked this whole
Yeah.
idea of making sure that they're represented tactfully
Yeah.
and properly into the game. So I really like how that happened, and
Mm-hmm.
it's currently depicted.
Yeah. So like that's a big thing. And again, us not being female does still make it a challenge. You would think
Yeah,
like
that's a
even
very
the
good point.
conversation about sexes, it's really easy to put yourself in the other shoes, but it's not. You can't relate to how females feel
Mhm.
about the way they're depicted in games, the way they're
Yeah.
represented in every space, and every single person is different. But one thing I think we did really well was that at least for the art team, we had a really strong balance of the number of female artists and the number of male
Mhm.
artists. Because when we were working on Welcome to Jalara, we had Ramiana, Leslie, Alex, Anastasia, Anna, and there's someone else who I'm missing. But I think we had more female artists than we had male artists when we were working on Welcome to Jalara. And I remember like that was really important because at that point we were working on the artwork for the champions, and we were still trying to place them. And every time we would draw a champion, and I felt a little uncomfortable, I would ping all the female artists and be like, is it the one? Do you think this
Mhm.
represents a character? Two, is this something you would be comfortable wearing in front of the public? And
That's pretty incredible.
um, a lot they would come with so many different perspectives. And I
Mhm.
know, like, some of our female artists, they're a lot more comfortable in their body, so they're a lot more comfortable with some of the characters, like Nubia, who don't wear as much clothes. But then some of the
Mhm.
female artists would advocate for characters more like Fong or Idris. And it was constantly a back and forth. I remember
Mhm.
Philip's artwork for Idris, Philip's champion artwork for Idris. Let me see if I can pull that up on the screen.
Mhm.
You're gonna see my tilted head for a few seconds here, but when he did that piece, I remember going back and forth with him quite a bit on. Oh, let me just pull it up first. Jay, where are you? Okay, let me just shrink that down. Sorry for this interruption. I just think it'll be good. Represents so this artwork that we have up on the screen. Um, Original piece for this artwork was her breasts were still covered, but the bottom of her shirt was going to get tapered down to a triangle down towards her belly button, which would expose the sides of her body a lot more.
Mhm.
And I remember going back and forth about this and being like, no, she should be wearing a full tunic across her entire body. And the other thing is that artists spend a lot of time on the human form. So after a
Mhm.
while, I remember having this back and forth and with Damian and him saying, for him, it's not sexualized to have women wearing uh, um, less clothing because he can abstract himself from the artwork. And I'm like, that's great. And I really love the fact that you can do that and appreciate the artwork for what it is. But not everyone who plays the game is an artist. And not everyone
Mhm.
who plays the game is mature enough to do that.
Yeah.
And so we have to take in the conversation of what are people reading as undertones in the conversation.
Mhm.
And the person you're talking about, his name was Sean, and the story behind this
Thanks.
is a while ago. Let me see if I can find the artwork for it. A while ago, we were. This was when we were doing the beta testing for Genesis. So this is pre-launch. We had a
Mhm.
poster up in the stores. I honestly don't think I can find that. And it had, if you've seen the champion artwork for Malik and Idris and Oni. Those three were together in a poster. And some of he used to host an after school D&D club. And it was with students who were, I think, between the ages of 10 to 15. And he wanted to use RPGs as a way to explore um, gender equalities, gender empowerment, and sexual orientation, all these things. And he wanted to have deeper conversations, but through gaming. Very ambitious goal, and I really hope he's still doing that. And he saw that poster, and some of his students said, "How come those women are being portrayed that way in the regards of like it seems like they were being subservient to Malik?" And
Mhm.
we told him no. This is the backstory. Here's the reasoning for why we have all the characters drawn the way we do, and this issue and that issue. And he's like, "That's great. It's wonderful that you have this backstory and you're able to justify it all." However, when someone sees that poster, they can't find that backstory. They sorry, there's just a comment that came in and I read it. Thank you, James. He says, my wife was going through the cards and noticed all the female champions. She says that's a strong move. Yeah, it's a big thing. But going back to that story with Sean, he's like, it's great that you have this backstory and that you're talking about these things. But when someone just sees that poster or just opens up a booster pack of cards, they can't read that backstory. They don't get the opportunity to be have all that information just kind of dumped into their brains and they understand it
Mhm.
immediately. And it's on us, the designers, the artists, the characters who are the people who are creating these characters to then empower these characters, to give them the
Yeah,
opportunity to have a voice, to have a perception. And so, uh,
definitely.
and it was really important to then uh, bring female artists in who can then advocate for particular design decisions that us males were making. And then even when it comes to so there's something that's going to come up in future chapters of the Akashic Codex, and it's going to talk about there's going to be a subtext of a character with an alternate sexual orientation, or so when it comes to that, it's something that was very important for the plot, but the way to deliver it was a very challenging thing because myself, I'm straight, our core writer is straight, and so having to then write for someone, a character who's gay, it was difficult because we, on one end, we want to include the other perspectives on life, but on the other end, we want to do it in a non-offensive way. We want to make sure
Definitely.
we are paying respect for the characters who are writing about.
Mhm.
And so, what do you think, Lionel? And this might be a bit of a difficult question, but do you think there's any place where we made a mistake with the way we do our inclusion? Is there something we could be better at?
Well, there's always things we could be better at.
Yeah.
And it is going to be a bit of a difficult question for me because, again, I've been fortunate. Um, but either way, let me. Um, Nothing, unfortunately, is coming to mind right now.
hmm So the one thing that comes to my mind is Long. Um, he just wears that one cloth around his body, and
Hmm.
uh, so this is something that definitely hit me a lot because the media talks a lot about female body issues and how there's a lot of psychology behind that can be problematic. But I know growing up I had a lot of body issues, and one of the things
Hmm.
that I thought was being motivating but in a lot of ways was mentally destroying was I used to have this poster of Batman up in my room, and I would look at this every time I was exercising and being like, how come my body doesn't look like that? How come I'm not as buff as that? Or how come I can't be
Hmm.
as toned as that? And I used to actually hate my body more because of this.
Hmm.
And when I look at Long, he's a very fit guy and a lot of his body's exposed. And it was important because we need to show the dragon scales and we need to show this or that. But if I were to go back, one of the things I would ask for, and this is one of the things we might ask for in the future, is changing Long's clothing so that he covers more of himself,
Hmm.
and then we can show more of the scales in other ways, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's a very good one actually, because now that I'm thinking about it, there aren't a whole lot of body types that we depict
yeah,
in our game. So that's for sure something we can
yeah.
get better at.
Like I remember going back and forth about this with Idris. So Idris is supposed to be a mother, right? She was a mother who
Hmm.
lost her child. If you read the last chapter, if you haven't read the last chapter of the Akasha
Oh no,
Codex, go
spoilers.
do that. Go do that. But one important thing to note is that Idris was a mother who lost her child, and we
Hmm.
wanted to figure out how to show that. And one of the things we talked about was how do we add more belly fat to her to show that she had a child.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I think that got lost in conversation, but it's not portrayed as accurately as I would have liked. Now, Nubia, for example, Nubia is a bit of a special case where she grew up as, if you read her story, you would know that she was a thief. She was she mastered a lot of magics, and she for a long time she used to work for the highest bidder to go steal things, and she had a bit of a dark and seedy past. And for that reason, she had to become very fit because she was a fighter. She was a she had to do a lot of physical tasks. So in that regard, it made sense to make her fit. And same with Raha, who's a fighter. But for someone like Kendra, Idris, and yeah, Kendra and Idris, they definitely didn't need to be fit. And I think Kendra actually does a pretty good job at just being who she is.
Hmm.
Um, I think when it comes to one of our big wins is um, Kendra, because I don't think there was a lot of emphasis in making her look um, stereotypically fantasy, high fantasy beauty type of thing. She
Yeah.
she is who she is, and she's crazy at it. And in a lot of ways, I love her for that. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think? Is there anything else about Genesis that you think we did fairly well when it comes to this conversation?
Um, I think we tried to extend the boundaries a little bit by including Core as a champion. So including essentially a genderless champion. Um, unless maybe I'm wrong. Is he? I've never actually read Core's bio. Is he
Mm-hmm.
male or do
Um,
we even depict him as that? Because
so
he's depicted as.
one of the
Go ahead.
biggest issues when it comes to making genderless champions is how do you show that artistically,
Hmm.
and it's difficult to do. But I will say that upcoming artwork, there's definitely some interesting boundaries that we've had to deal with when it comes to
Ah.
that. But yeah, core is definitely an interesting thing. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and
That
then
was at least the
uh,
first one that came to
yeah,
mind.
there are
Um,
other things that I think we work on, but I think more importantly, there are a lot of
mhm,
issues we look at, and
mhm,
one of the biggest things is I would love it for the day when we have the ability to
mhm,
hire in more game designers, more artists, and bring them on like full time into the project. Um,
mhm.
Expanding our portfolio of the people who come and work at Haunted Castle
Yeah.
Gaming. I think that's very, very important.
Mhm. And I also would like to mention that just because the way the game is depicted, the majority of the characters depicted are champions, and there are only a few select amount. So the amount of inclusion that we can there's a lot of inclusion we can include, but there is a lot like what as new champions are released,
Mm-hmm.
there is more opportunities,
Yeah.
and a lot of um, the creatures in the game are generally that creatures. So
Yeah.
you can't. It's hard to include to have that level of inclusion when it comes to creatures, unless I'm wrong. Do you
I,
disagree with
I
that?
I would like to counter that and say
Yeah.
the other side to it is mythology inclusion. When we talk about a lot of
Oh
fantasy
right.
things,
Yeah.
how many games can we bring up that deal with
Hmm.
Greek mythology? Norse mythology is becoming much more popular now with um,
Hmm.
the Marvel universe becoming more popular and Thor becoming a big character. We're now seeing Norse mythology show up in a
Hmm.
lot of gaming. Um, and so we don't want to stop ourselves from being able to explore those spaces, but we also took the time to explore spaces that don't necessarily see a lot of attention. So like Hindu
Hmm.
mythology, outside of Final Fantasy, that use Shiva and Bahamut and Leviathans, how often do you hear about Hindu mythology in other
Yeah.
spaces?
You don't
Not
really.
as often. So
Not so
Yamaduta
often.
and Yamaraja, that was definitely
Hmm.
something that was unique for us. And I know you personally spent a lot of time researching those things.
Yeah,
So
I
you
did.
learned a lot more. Like, how much more about the Hindu mythology do you know now than you did
Oh,
before, right?
miles and miles more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I was thinking too small the scope when I was looking at inclusion specifically
Yeah.
with peoples, but cultures is a
Yeah.
massive part of this conversation.
The Chinese mythology we try to bring. I think the Rajeshi lion is one of my favorite because
Hmm.
if you ever go to most Chinatowns, will have a lion statue either at the front gate or somewhere throughout, and you'll notice that it looks a lot like the Rajeshi lion
Hmm.
in Genesis. And the story behind how lions became part of Chinese mythology, even though
Hmm.
lions are not native to China. It's a very interesting
That's
story on
crazy.
how they came from, how that all happened, right?
Yeah, and we could talk hour miles
Yeah,
and miles about it because
yeah,
there's so many examples. Because one of my favorite was even like researching the art for Barik Naga. Like I
yep,
really enjoyed that one.
yep,
Yeah, I can
yeah.
continue
Because
on
when
just like
most people
Naga's
think of
art.
Nagas, they're thinking of the Greek mythology of Nagas,
Yeah.
and we went into um,
Hmm.
the what do you call them? I think it
That's
was
just weird.
Thai mythology or somewhere
Okay,
around
yeah.
there. So yeah, it's a completely different perspective because a lot of these creatures show up in a lot of different spaces.
Hmm.
So having that opportunity to explore other mythologies is a lot of fun. Looking into other cultures is a lot of fun. So there are other things we're trying our best to do, but
Hmm.
again, we're also limited by the fact that we are just the four of us as game designers.
Yeah.
Two of them are missing. They should have been down there, like one underneath Lionel and one
Hmm.
underneath me, but they didn't show up today, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
However,
fine.
regardless, it's just a few of us who are working on the game. So the amount of time we spend bouncing between research and design and testing, and the fact that three of the four of us are part time on this project, it does limit us in a lot of spaces. But
Mm.
our wishful thinking, our ideal situation, we would love to see more, a lot more things covered when it comes to who's on this team.
Hmm.
So if that sparks your interest, I mean, we can always have a conversation about that. Hey, JC, thanks for joining us in spirit. Um, yeah, it's we have our limitations. We're trying our best. I think as a small game design
Yeah.
studio, we can only go so far. But I think set after set, year after year, we're
Hmm.
this is a conversation we revisit on a regular
Yeah.
basis, because it's something that matters to us, who we are as individuals.
100%.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to wrap up today's conversation. Thank you,
Hmm.
Lionel, so much for joining
Yeah.
and helping uh, have this back and forth. Thank you, everyone who's watching and leaving comments. It's been
Yeah.
great. I love doing these. Again, like I said, if the would it work for you if we do this these live streams at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so basically 6 hours from now? Or would that work better for you? If so, let us know because we want to try to find another time slot that works for everyone. Um,
Mhm.
we got, uh, I think I don't know what our next episode is for the Tuesday show, so you're gonna have to wait and see. But either way, I had a lot of fun talking with Alex this past Tuesday about the Future League stuff. If you want to go watch that, go to the YouTube channel and check out the Exploring the Library playlist. You should find all the episodes there. New chapters for the Akasha Codex. Idris Part 1 came out this Monday. It's an awesome read. I'm really, really excited for people to read the next chapter. I had a lot of fun skeletoning that. That's the first chapter where I did the skeleton, Carl did the writing, and Brad, our amazing, amazing editor, did the editing. So that chapter I'm super psyched about. And then tonight we are doing Tabletop Simulator at 7 p.m. to do Future League testing. There's the tournament happening on the 23rd. If you're interested, free to enter. And I am going to be encouraging all the game designers to be participating in that tournament. That includes you, Lionel. I glare at the. So hopefully we get a good turnout for that tournament. And then as for COVID, if you're in Ontario, you know we are in the stay-at-home procedure. Um, just know at the end of the day, do what you can to keep everyone around you and yourself safe. Um, we're so close to getting through this entire thing. So I know we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that the tunnel feels very very far, but there is a light, and we will get through this. So thank you everyone who supports us. And again, if you want to continue this conversation, join us on Discord. The link is in the chat, and we will see you next time. Thank you, and have a wonderful
Yeah.
weekend.
Thanks,
Hey,
everybody.
bye.
Bye.